A barefoot black girl walked into the billionaire's office.
I want to check my balance.
"I'm here to check my balance," she said quietly. The billionaire laughed in her face. Then his computer screen lit up and his entire world shattered. October 15th, 2024, 3:47 p.m., downtown Miami. The 40th floor of the Sentinel Tower didn't feel like a bank. It felt like a kingdom. Burks Financial Group managed wealth the way museums managed art, selectively, reverently, and only for people who already had enough. The Italian marble floors caught the Miami sun streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. The air smelled like leather portfolios and $18 coffee. Even the elevator required a key card to reach this floor. This was Clifford Burks's world. And in his world, the wrong kind of people simply didn't exist. He was in the middle of entertaining his three wealthiest clients: a tech CEO, a real estate dynasty heir, and a retired hedge fund manager, when the glass doors to reception slid open. A child walked in. Not just any child. A poor black child. Barefoot. Brown-skinned. Maybe 10 years old. Her t-shirt had a stain across the front that looked like ketchup or rust. Her jeans were rolled up at the ankles because they were too long. She clutched a manila envelope against her chest like a shield. And she left dusty footprints on Clifford's 400 per square foot marble. The receptionist's professional smile vanished. She reached for the phone. Security, probably. But the little girl was already approaching the desk. "I'm here to check my balance," the child said quietly. From the glass-walled conference room, Clifford saw his receptionist's face flush with embarrassment. He saw his other employees glancing at each other, unsure how to handle this situation. And he saw an opportunity. "Gentlemen," Clifford said to his clients, standing smoothly, "allow me to demonstrate something about the culture we maintain here at Burks Financial Group. Discretion, standards, and knowing exactly who belongs." His clients followed him out of the conference room like sharks scenting blood. Clifford crossed the lobby with the confidence of a man who'd never been wrong about anything in his life. He was 50 years old, silver-haired, 6 feet tall, in his Berluti shoes. His suit cost more than most people's monthly rent. He'd built this empire from middle-class roots, and he'd done it by understanding one fundamental truth: the world belonged to people who looked like they belonged. This child did not belong. "Well, hello there, sweetheart," Clifford said, his voice dripping with performative kindness. His clients formed a semicircle behind him, amused. "Are you lost? Did someone send you here as a joke?" The little girl looked up at him with wide, dark eyes that had seen too much. "No, sir. My grandma said to come here on my birthday. She said my daddy left something for me." Clifford's smile widened. His clients chuckled. This was adorable, the kind of story they'd tell at the country club later. "Your daddy left something here. At Burks Financial Group." Clifford glanced back at his audience, playing it up. "Well, this ought to be interesting." The child carefully opened her envelope and pulled out a platinum card. It was scratched and worn, like it had been kept in a drawer for years. She held it out to him. Clifford took it between 2 fingers, the way you'd hold something you found on the ground. "Did you find this somewhere, honey? Maybe in a parking lot?" "No, sir. It's mine. My grandma gave it to me yesterday before she—" The child's voice caught. Before she passed. One of Clifford's clients, the hedge fund manager, actually winced at that. But Clifford was committed to the bit now. "I see. Well, let's just take a look at this, shall we?" He turned to his head of security, Tom Rodriguez, a former Marine who ran the firm's systems. "Tom, can you run this card for our young friend here?" Tom took the card, and something flickered across his face. Something Clifford didn't recognize. Was that fear? Tom walked quickly to the nearest computer terminal. He swiped the card, typed something, then stopped. "Sir." Tom's voice was tight. "I need you to see this. Now." Clifford's smile faltered. "Tom, I'm in the middle of—" "Sir." Tom wasn't looking at him. He was staring at the screen like it had just shown him a ghost. "Right now?" The clients exchanged glances. Clifford, annoyed, strode over to the terminal. Tom stepped aside, and Clifford looked at the screen. Account name Marie Elizabeth Gilley, irrevocable trust, current balance $89,734,619.47, status active, beneficiary access granted, trustee Clifford Burks, personal designation established October 15th, 2015 beneficiary access date October 15th, 2024. The lobby seemed to tilt. Clifford's mouth went dry. His hand trembled on the mouse. He scrolled down. There had to be a mistake, a system error, something. Primary account holder deceased Colonel David James Gilley, military service, U.S. Army. Medal of Honor recipient, date of death October 15th, 2015, Kandahar Province, Afghanistan. Behind him, his executive assistant Diana Marshall had approached. She was a Marine Corps veteran herself. She'd served 2 tours in Iraq. She looked over Clifford's shoulder at the screen, and her breath caught. "Oh my God," Diana whispered. "Colonel Gilley." Tom Rodriguez's voice was shaking. "I served with his unit in 2014. He died covering an evacuation. Took an IED meant for 6 men. He was a hero." The lobby was silent except for the hum of the air conditioning. Clifford turned slowly to face the little girl. She was still standing there, barefoot on his marble floor, clutching her grandmother's envelope. "What?" Clifford's voice cracked. "What did you say your name was?" "Marie," the child said softly. "Marie Gilley. My daddy was a soldier." Clifford's legs nearly gave out. Behind him, his clients weren't laughing anymore. The tech CEO had tears in his eyes. The hedge fund manager was staring at the floor. And Clifford Burks, billionaire, master of the universe, keeper of standards, realized he had just mocked the daughter of a man who'd entrusted him with everything. A man who died believing Clifford was honorable. There's a video file embedded in the account," Diana said quietly. She was crying. "It's coded to play when the beneficiary first accesses the trust." Clifford couldn't speak. He could barely breathe. Marie looked up at him with those impossibly old eyes. "Can I see it?" she asked. "Can I see my daddy?" And in that moment, Clifford Burks understood that he was about to watch a dead man, a hero, explain why he'd trusted a person who didn't deserve it. "Yes," Clifford whispered. "Yes, Marie. Let's go see your father." Diana's hands moved across the keyboard with practiced efficiency, but Clifford could see them trembling. She'd pulled up the trust documents, layers of legal language and financial instruments that represented 9 years of compound interest and careful management. At the bottom of the file tree, a single video file sat waiting. "It's coded to play only when the account is accessed by the beneficiary," Diana said softly, her Marine Corps training barely containing the emotion in her voice. Colonel Gilley recorded this in 2015, right before his final deployment. "The file's been sitting in our system for 9 years, waiting for today." Clifford couldn't find his voice. His clients had followed them into the conference room. Nobody had suggested they leave, and somehow it felt wrong to ask them to go. This wasn't entertainment anymore. This was something else. Something sacred. Marie stood beside Diana's chair, so small she barely reached the armrest. She was staring at the darkened screen with an intensity that made Clifford's chest ache. "Play it," he managed to whisper. Diana clicked the file. The massive conference room screen, usually reserved for market reports and portfolio presentations, flickered to life. And there he was. Colonel David James Gilley sat in what looked like a plywood-walled room, bare except for a military cot and a single photograph taped to the wall behind him. Even in the grainy video quality, Clifford could see it was a picture of a baby, Marie, impossibly small, wrapped in a pink blanket. The colonel wore his combat fatigues, dusty and worn. He was 32 years old according to his file, but his eyes looked 50, 100, ancient. He smiled at the camera, and it was like watching a man smile through broken glass. October 15th, 2024. "Marie, you're 10 years old today. Happy birthday, baby girl." Marie made a sound, small, wounded. Diana put a hand on her shoulder. The colonel's smile widened, but his eyes stayed sad. "If you're watching this, it means I didn't make it home. And I'm so sorry." He stopped, took a breath that seemed to cost him everything. "But I need you to listen to me, okay? I didn't leave you alone. I left you with armor." He held up a worn notebook, its pages covered in numbers and calculations. Clifford recognized his own company's letterhead on some of the papers visible in the frame. "I put every penny I ever made into this trust. Every combat bonus, every re-enlistment check, my whole life insurance policy, 89 million. It's not just money, baby." His voice cracked. "It's every Christmas morning I'll miss. Every time you need someone to walk you down the aisle. Every soccer game I won't be there to cheer for. Every grandkid I won't get to hold. This is me, still protecting you." This is me making sure that even though I can't be there, you'll never have to be afraid." Behind Clifford, someone was crying. He didn't turn to see who. Colonel Gilley's expression hardened, his jaw setting with military precision. "I chose Burks Financial Group because I met Mr. Clifford Burks at a veterans charity event in 2014. It was at the Fontainebleau, some fancy dinner for wounded warriors. I was there representing my unit." He smiled at the memory. Mr. Burks was sitting at the sponsor table. Most of the wealthy folks there were doing the charity circuit thing. You know, shake a hand, take a photo, move on. But Mr. Burks stopped. He looked me in the eye, really looked at me, and said, "Thank you for your service." And I could tell he meant it. We talked for 20 minutes about my daughter, about what I wanted for her future. He told me about his own little girl. Clifford felt his knees weaken. He remembered that night. He remembered that conversation. His daughter Emma had still been alive then, still fighting her leukemia with everything she had. He'd told the colonel about her favorite books, her laugh, her dreams of becoming a veterinarian. The colonel leaned forward, and suddenly he wasn't talking to Marie anymore. He was looking directly into the camera, directly at Clifford. "Mr. Burks, if you're watching this with my daughter, I'm asking you man to man, honor that handshake. She's everything to me. Everything I fought for. Everything I'm dying for." His voice dropped to something fierce and desperate. "Don't let the world make her small. Don't let anyone tell her she's less than she is because of where she comes from, or what she looks like, or how much money is in her pocket. She is the daughter of a soldier. She is the daughter of a man who gave everything. She deserves dignity. She deserves respect. She deserves someone to see her the way you saw me that night, like a human being who matters." Tom Rodriguez was standing at attention now, tears streaming down his face, his hand raised in a salute to the screen. Colonel Gilley turned back to face his daughter, and his eyes filled with tears. "Marie, you're going to be scared sometimes. You're going to feel alone. There are going to be nights when you miss me so much it feels like your heart is breaking." His voice was breaking too. "But every time you need me, you look at this money and remember, your daddy never left you. I'm in every dollar. I'm in every opportunity this buys you. I'm in every door this opens. Every time someone tells you that you can't, or you shouldn't, or you don't belong, you remember that your daddy believed you could do anything. You remember that a man died making sure you'd have every chance in the world." He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, and Clifford could see the calluses, the scars, the physical evidence of a life spent in service. "Be brave, baby girl. Be kind. Be exactly who you are." Colonel Gilley's voice shattered. "I love you more than all the stars in the sky. I love you more than all the oceans are deep. I love you with everything I am and everything I'll never get to be. Your daddy, forever and ever and ever." The colonel raised his hand to the camera, pressed his palm against the lens like he was reaching through time itself to touch his daughter's face. "Forever, Marie. I promise." The screen went black. The silence in the conference room was absolute. Not the polite quiet of a respectful pause, but the profound silence of a world that had fundamentally shifted on its axis. The hedge fund manager, Richard Aldrich, Clifford suddenly remembered his full name, was crying openly, his shoulders shaking. The tech CEO had his face in his hands. The real estate heir was staring at the ceiling, blinking hard. Tom Rodriguez still stood at attention, his salute perfect and unwavering, tears cutting tracks down his face. Diana had wrapped her arms around Marie, but the little girl stood rigid, staring at the darkened screen like she could will her father back into existence. And Clifford Burks couldn't breathe. He'd forgotten that conversation. 9 years ago, when Emma was still alive, when he'd still been the man who looked soldiers in the eye and meant it when he thanked them. He'd forgotten the promise he'd made, not in words, but in that handshake, in that moment of genuine human connection. He'd forgotten who he used to be. He looked at Marie, this tiny, barefoot child who'd walked into his kingdom and shattered it, and saw the weight of a promise he'd made to a dead hero. A promise he'd broken the moment he'd laughed at her. "Marie." His voice came out strangled, broken. "Marie, where's your grandmother?" Marie turned to look at him. Her face was dry. She hadn't cried during the video, and something about that was more devastating than tears could ever be. "She died yesterday," Marie said, her voice matter of fact in the way only a child who'd learned to survive could manage. "She'd been sick for a long time. Cancer," they said. "The lady from the county came this morning. She said I have to go to a group home tomorrow. They're coming to get me at noon." Clifford's knees buckled. Diana caught his arm, steadying him. But Grandma made me promise, Marie continued, reaching into her envelope. She pulled out a handwritten note, the paper thin and worn from being folded and refolded. She made me promise to come here first. She said my daddy wanted me to. She said Mr. Burks would take care of me. She held out the note. Clifford took it with shaking hands. The handwriting was spidery, weak, the letters formed by someone in great pain. Mr. Burks, you don't know me, but you knew my son-in-law, David. He trusted you. I'm trusting you too. My Marie is a good girl. She deserves better than I could give her. Please, please see her. Please help her. Her daddy believed you would. Dorothea Gilley, she wrote it on Tuesday, Marie said quietly. She died on Wednesday morning. The note slipped from Clifford's fingers. He looked at this child, this orphaned, homeless, barefoot child who'd been living God knows where while 89 million sat untouched in his building, and felt something inside him crack completely open. You've been alone since yesterday. Diana's voice was thick with tears. The county lady said someone would call, but nobody did yet. So I came here, like Grandma said. Marie looked up at Clifford with those ancient eyes. Did I do it right? Clifford couldn't speak, couldn't move, couldn't do anything except stand there and feel the full weight of his failure crushing down on him like that ID that took Colonel Gilley's life. A man had died believing Clifford Burks was honorable, had died trusting him with the most precious thing in his world. And Clifford had laughed in her face. Clifford's voice cut through the silence like broken glass. Cancel everything. His assistant Jennifer appeared in the doorway, tablet in hand, her professional mask barely concealing her shock at the scene before her. Sir, everything, every meeting, every call, every appointment for the rest of the week. He wasn't looking at her. He was looking at Marie, who stood small and still in the center of his conference room. Tell them something came up. Tell them whatever you want. Just cancel it all. Jennifer nodded and disappeared. Richard Aldrich, the hedge fund manager, stood slowly, his expensive suit rumpled from where he'd been gripping the fabric. Cliff, if there's anything we can do, go home to your families, Clifford said quietly. Hug your children. And thank God they'll never know what this feels like. The three men left without another word, their footsteps echoing across the marble like a funeral march. Diana was already moving, her Marine Corps efficiency kicking into gear. I'm coming with you. Diana, you don't have to. I'm coming with you, she repeated, her tone brooking no argument. Sir. Tom Rodriguez stepped forward, and Clifford saw that his head of security had wiped his face, but his eyes were still red-rimmed. I served with Colonel Gilley's unit in 2014, sir. I owe him this. I owe him everything. Clifford looked at these two people, these veterans who'd served their country and somehow ended up working for a man who'd forgotten what service meant, and felt something like gratitude cut through the shame. He turned to Marie. Can you take me to where you've been living? Marie nodded, reaching for her grandmother's envelope like a talisman. It's not very far. We can walk if. We'll drive, Clifford said softly. The Bentley felt obscene. Clifford sat in the back seat next to Marie, watching Miami slide past the tinted windows, his Miami, the one he saw from 40 floors up, the one that looked clean and prosperous and manageable. Diana drove with Tom in the passenger seat, following Marie's quiet directions. Turn left at the light. It's the blue building. The one with the... She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. The Seabreeze Motel rose up before them like a monument to everything Clifford had spent his life pretending didn't exist. The paint had faded to a diseased blue-gray. Half the windows were boarded up. Graffiti covered the lower walls, territory markings, phone numbers, obscenities. A condemned notice from the city hung crooked on the office door. Clifford stepped out of the car, and the smell hit him first. Garbage, mold, human waste, desperation. His Italian leather shoes crunched on broken glass. This way, Marie said, heading toward the exterior staircase. Tom caught Clifford's arm on the third step. The railing was missing. The concrete was crumbling. One wrong move, and you'd fall 20 feet onto bare ground. Careful, sir, Tom murmured. They climbed to the second floor. The walkway was littered with debris, fast food containers, cigarette butts, things Clifford didn't want to identify. Marie navigated it all with the practiced ease of someone who'd learned to make herself small, to move through danger without drawing attention. She stopped at Unit 12. The door was closed with a bent wire hanger threaded through the handle and twisted around the frame. The lock broke, Marie explained, unwinding the hanger with small, efficient movements. Grandma couldn't afford to fix it. The door swung open. Clifford had seen poverty before, in photographs, in documentaries, in carefully curated charity events where people like him wrote checks and felt noble. But he'd never stood inside it, never breathed its air, never felt it press against his skin like a living thing. The room was 200 square feet at most. No furniture except a mattress on the floor, covered with a thin donated blanket that said Miami Rescue Mission in faded letters. The walls were water-stained, blooming with black mold. The carpet was torn up in places, revealing concrete. Underneath, Marie's school uniform hung on a nail driven into the drywall, a white shirt and navy skirt, washed and rewashed so many times the fabric had gone translucent. You could see the nail head through the shirt. A hot plate sat on the floor, unplugged, its cord frayed and dangerous. Beside it, a single plastic plate and a bent spoon. And on the mattress, covered with a sheet, was the unmistakable shape of a human body. Diana crossed herself. Tom removed his sunglasses, his jaw clenched. Clifford couldn't move, couldn't process. This was where she'd been living. This was where Colonel Gilley's daughter had laid her head at night, while 89 million sat earning interest in Clifford's temperature-controlled vault. On the wall above the mattress, someone had taped a single photograph. Colonel David Gilley in his dress uniform, medals gleaming, American flag behind him. He was smiling, the kind of smile that knew sorrow was coming but chose joy anyway. Marie walked to the photograph and touched it gently. "My daddy," she said simply. Diana's voice was carefully controlled. "Marie, honey, where have you been eating?" "The school gives breakfast and lunch," Marie said, like she was reciting a lesson she'd memorized. "Mrs. Patterson in the cafeteria always gives me extra milk. At night, sometimes the church on 8th Street has a food pantry. They give you a bag with bread and peanut butter and stuff. But you can only go on Tuesdays and Thursdays." "What about other nights?" Tom's voice was rough. Marie shrugged. "Sometimes I'm not hungry. Or I just have crackers. Grandma kept crackers." Clifford found his voice, though it barely sounded like his own. "Have you been going to school like this? Barefoot?" "I have shoes," Marie said quickly, defensive. She reached under the mattress and pulled out a pair of sneakers that might have been white once. They were at least 2 sizes too small, the toes curling up, the soles separating from the canvas. "But they hurt now. My feet grew. So it's easier to jest." She trailed off, looking down at her bare feet on the stained carpet. Diana knelt beside her. "Baby, how long has the electricity been off?" "Maybe a month. Grandma couldn't pay after she got too sick to work. But it's okay. We didn't need it much. Water. The bathroom sink still works. Sometimes." Clifford turned and walked out of the room. Made it 3 steps down the walkway before his legs gave out. He caught himself on the wall, the same wall covered in graffiti and grime, and leaned there, trying to breathe. Diana followed him, gave him space, but stayed close. "She's been living like this." Clifford's voice was barely a whisper. "For months. While her father's fortune sat 40 floors up in my building. While I entertained clients over $18 coffee. While I worried about quarterly returns and market volatility and which yacht club to join." "You didn't know," Diana said. "I should have known." The words exploded out of him. "He trusted me. He shook my hand and looked me in the eye and trusted me with the most important thing in his world, and I didn't even." His voice broke. "I didn't even check. I never asked. The account sat there for 9 years and I never once thought, is this child okay? Is she safe? Is she eating?" He slid down the wall, his $5,000 suit dragging against peeling paint. "I laughed at her, Diana. I stood in my marble lobby with my wealthy clients and I laughed at her. At Colonel Gilley's daughter. At the child of a Medal of Honor recipient. I looked at her bare feet and her stained shirt, and I decided she was nothing." Diana sat down beside him on the concrete walkway. Below them, Miami stretched out in the late afternoon sun, beautiful, indifferent, full of people like the man Clifford used to be. "My daughter died 5 years ago," Clifford said suddenly. "Emma. She was 7. Leukemia." He stared at his hands. "After she died, I threw myself into work. Made more money. Bought bigger things. Joined more exclusive clubs. I told myself I was building something. Creating a legacy." He laughed bitterly. "But all I was really doing was making sure I never had to feel anything again. Making sure I could look at a suffering child and see a problem to be removed instead of a person to be helped." "So what are you going to do?" Diana asked quietly. "I don't know how to fix this." "Yes, you do. Diana stood, offered him her hand. You start by being the man Colonel Gilley thought you were. The man who looked him in the eye and meant it. Clifford took her hand, let her pull him to his feet. Inside Unit 12, Tom was kneeling beside Marie, showing her his own Medal of Valor from his service. Marie was touching it carefully, reverently, and asking questions about what it was like to be a soldier. Clifford watched them through the doorway, a veteran honoring a fallen comrade's daughter in a condemned motel room, and felt something fundamental shift inside his chest. Marie, he said. She looked up, and Clifford made himself walk back into that room. Made himself kneel on that filthy carpet beside this child he'd failed. You can't stay here, he said gently. And you're not going to a group home. Not if I can help it. Where will I go? Clifford looked at Diana, who nodded. Home, Diana said. You're coming home with me, baby. For as long as you need. Marie's eyes went wide. I don't want to be trouble. You're not trouble, Tom said fiercely. You're Colonel Gilley's daughter. Your family. Clifford stood, his knees protesting, his expensive suit ruined. Let's get your things. We're leaving this place right now. Marie gathered her few possessions, the photograph, her grandmother's rosary, the 2 small shoes, a stuffed bear with one eye missing. Everything she owned fit in a plastic grocery bag. Before they left, she walked to the sheet-covered body and touched it gently. Bye, Grandma. I promise I'll make you proud. I promise I'll be good. And Clifford Burks, billionaire, master of the universe, keeper of standards, wept openly, his tears falling on the condemned motel carpet where the daughter of a hero had learned to survive. The social services van wasn't scheduled until noon the next day, but Clifford knew they couldn't let Marie spend another night in that place. Still, standing in Unit 12 with the afternoon sun casting long shadows through the broken blinds, he realized there was something he needed to say before they left. He knelt down on the stained carpet, bringing himself to Marie's eye level. The position was achingly familiar. He'd knelt like this for Emma, in her hospital room, when she was too weak to sit up, but still wanted to look him in the eye when they talked about hard things. He'd forgotten what it felt like to make yourself small for a child, to meet them where they were instead of towering over them. Marie, I need to tell you something, he began, his voice steady despite the chaos in his chest. When you walked into my office today, I was unkind to you. I judged you based on how you looked. I made assumptions about who you were and why you were there. I failed your father. Marie's forehead crinkled in confusion, her small hands twisting the strap of her grocery bag. But you kept the money safe. That's what Grandma said you were supposed to do. Keeping money safe isn't enough. Clifford had to stop, swallow against the thickness in his throat. Your father didn't just ask me to manage an account. When he looked me in the eye and shook my hand, he was asking me to keep you safe, to make sure you were okay, to see you as someone who matters. And I didn't do that. I'm so sorry. Marie studied him with those ancient eyes, processing his words with the careful deliberation of a child who'd learned that adults didn't always mean what they said. Her voice, when it came, was small and uncertain. Are you going to take the money back? The question hit Clifford like a physical blow. This was what she'd learned to fear, that anything good could be snatched away, that promises were conditional, that security was always temporary. What? No. Marie, that money is yours. Your father made absolutely sure of that. Nobody can take it away from you. Not me, not anyone. It's yours forever. Then why are you sorry? The simplicity of the question nearly broke him. Why was he sorry if he'd technically done his job? If the money was safe and growing and properly managed? Because you deserved better than what I gave you today, Clifford said slowly, choosing each word with care. You deserved respect. You deserved dignity. You deserved kindness. You deserved to be seen as a person, not as a problem or an interruption. And I gave you none of those things. I laughed at you. I humiliated you in front of people who should have known better. I looked at your bare feet and your stained shirt, and I decided you were invisible. His voice cracked. And your father trusted me not to do that. Marie tilted her head, still watching him with that unnerving intensity. Then she said quietly, My daddy told me something once. In one of the letters Grandma read to me. What did he say? He said everybody makes mistakes. He said even soldiers mess up sometimes, even when they're trying their hardest. He said what matters isn't being perfect. She paused, her small fingers still working at the grocery bag strap. He said what matters is what you do after you mess up. If you fix it. If you try to be better. The conditional grace of it, the doorway she was offering him, made Clifford's chest ache. Are you going to try to be better? Marie asked. Yes, Clifford whispered. I promise you, Marie. I'm going to try. She nodded once, grave and formal, like they'd just sealed a contract. Okay then. Within the hour, they'd gathered Marie's few possessions, the photograph in Tom's careful hands, the rosary wrapped around her wrist, the one-eyed bear, and 2 small shoes tucked into the grocery bag. Diana had made the calls to social services, navigating bureaucracy with the efficiency of someone used to cutting through red tape. We'll handle the formalities tomorrow, Diana assured Marie. Tonight, you're coming home with me. Safe and warm and fed. The Bentley felt different on the drive to Coral Gables. Clifford drove this time, needing something concrete to focus on while his entire understanding of himself restructured. Marie sat in the back seat, her father's photograph propped carefully beside her. She was quiet, staring out the window at Miami sliding past, familiar street scene from an unfamiliar angle, from inside a car that cost more than most people earned in years. Clifford watched her in the rearview mirror, this small girl who'd lost everything and somehow still had the capacity for grace. His own reflection looked like a stranger, expensive suit rumpled, silver hair disheveled, eyes red from crying. The man in the mirror had no idea who he was anymore. They were stopped at a red light on Biscayne when Marie spoke. Mr. Burks. Clifford's eyes found hers in the mirror. Yes, Marie. Thank you for crying. The words were so unexpected, so tender, that Clifford felt his vision blur again. Grandma said it's okay for men to cry, Marie continued, her voice carrying that same matter-of-fact tone she used for everything. She said some people think men aren't supposed to, but that's wrong. She said my daddy cried when I was born. She said he held me for the first time and just cried and cried because he was so happy and because he knew he might have to leave me someday. And it hurt his heart both ways at once. The light turned green. Cars honked behind him. Clifford couldn't move, couldn't see, couldn't do anything except grip the steering wheel and try to breathe. He pulled over into a gas station parking lot, ignoring the angry honks, his vision blurring so badly he couldn't trust himself to drive. His hands shook. His chest heaved, and he sobbed. Deep, wrenching sounds he hadn't made since Emma's funeral, since the day he'd buried his daughter and promised himself he'd never hurt like that again. He felt a small hand touch his shoulder from the back seat. It's okay, Marie said softly, her voice infinitely gentle. It's okay to be sad. Grandma said crying is just love with nowhere to go. A pause. We're going to be okay now. All of us. Daddy made sure we'd be okay. Diana, in the passenger seat, was crying too. Through the windshield, Clifford could see other drivers staring as they passed, but he didn't care. Let them look. Let them see a billionaire broken open by a 10-year-old's grace. We're going to be okay, Marie repeated, patting his shoulder the way you might comfort a frightened child. Daddy said in his video that love covers mistakes. That if we remember to love each other, everything works out. Clifford turned in his seat, looked at this child, this impossibly brave, impossibly forgiving child, and saw the echo of her father. The man who died protecting his brothers. The man who trusted a stranger to honor a handshake. Your daddy was right, Clifford whispered. About everything. Marie smiled, small and uncertain, but real. Can we go now? I'm really tired. Clifford wiped his eyes, checked his mirrors, and pulled back onto the road. They drove the rest of the way in silence, but it was a different kind of quiet now. Not empty, but full. Full of possibilities and second chances, and the fragile beginning of something like healing. The next morning, they returned to the Seabreeze Motel. Not to the room. None of them could bear that, but to collect Marie's grandmother. The funeral home had been contacted. Arrangements had been made. Clifford had paid for everything without being asked, and for once, money felt like it was being used for something that mattered. They buried Dorothy Gilley at Woodlawn Cemetery. It was a small service. Just the 4 of them, Clifford, Diana, Tom, and Marie. Tom stood at attention the entire time, his hand raised in salute to a woman who'd kept a soldier's daughter alive against impossible odds. Diana read from the Bible, her Marine Corps composure cracking only. When she reached the part about blessed are those who mourn. Clifford stood silent, bearing witness, trying to understand how this woman had survived poverty and sickness and grief while he'd been 40 floors up complaining about market volatility. Marie stood at the graveside in a new black dress Diana had bought that morning. In her hands was a single white rose. When the pastor finished speaking, She stepped forward and laid it gently on the casket. "Bye, Grandma," she whispered. "Thank you for taking care of me. Thank you for making me come see Mr. Burks like you promised, Daddy. You were right. It's going to be okay now." She stepped back, took Diana's hand, and didn't cry. Clifford marveled at her strength, even as his own tears fell freely. This child had every reason to rage at the world, to curse God, to collapse under the weight of her grief. Instead, she stood tall, the daughter of a soldier, the granddaughter of a saint, carrying a legacy of sacrifice and love that Clifford was only beginning to understand. As they walked back to the car, Marie slipped her free hand into Clifford's. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for giving Grandma a nice place to rest. With Mama, she would have liked that." Clifford squeezed her hand gently. "Your grandmother was a remarkable woman, Marie. Just like you. I'm not remarkable. I'm just me." "Sometimes," Clifford said, "that's the most remarkable thing of all." 3 months had changed everything. Diana's home in Coral Gables was nothing like the Seabreeze Motel. Sunlight streamed through actual windows, clean ones, with curtains Marie had picked out herself. The room smelled like coffee and vanilla candles instead of mold and despair. And upstairs, in what had once been Diana's home office, Marie had a room of her own. Books lined shelves Clifford had installed himself, his expensive suit traded for jeans and a t-shirt, his manicured hands learning to hold a drill. A new school uniform hung in the closet, 3 of them, actually, properly sized and pristine. Her father's photograph sat on the nightstand in a new frame, but it was the same picture, the same smile, the same promise that he'd never really left her. Marie attended therapy twice a week with Dr. Sarah Chun, a specialist in childhood trauma. She was back in school full-time at Coral Gables Preparatory, where she'd made friends with a girl named Sophia who loved books as much as she did. The nightmares were getting less frequent. The social worker's reports were glowing. The trust, all 89 million of it, plus 3 months of growth, was being managed by an independent financial advisory firm. Clifford had recused himself, properly this time, with oversight and accountability and all the safeguards he should have put in place 9 years ago. But Clifford himself had changed more than anyone. He'd resigned as CEO of Burks Financial Group on October 20th, 5 days after meeting Marie. The board had been shocked. His third wife, a 28-year-old former model named Brittany, had filed for divorce within a week, citing irreconcilable differences. She'd gotten a house in the Hamptons. Clifford hadn't contested it. Instead, he'd called Ellen Burks, his first wife, Emma's mother, the woman he'd divorced because he couldn't bear to look at someone who reminded him of everything he'd lost, had answered on the third ring. They'd met for coffee, then dinner, then weekly grief counseling sessions with the therapist Ellen had been seeing for 5 years. They weren't back together, not in the traditional sense, but they were learning to be friends again, learning to honor Emma's memory together instead of running from it separately. 3 days a week, Clifford volunteered at the Miami Veterans Center, teaching financial literacy classes to military families transitioning to civilian life. He wore khakis and button-downs instead of bespoke suits. He learned the names of every veteran who walked through the door. He listened more than he spoke. And he'd established the Colonel David Gilley protocol at Burks Financial Group, a comprehensive system requiring that any account with a minor beneficiary received wraparound services. Education coordinators, housing assistants, mental health counseling, regular check-ins, the kind of support that would have saved Marie from ever setting foot in that motel. His former firm had adopted it. Then 3 competitors had adopted it. Now it was becoming an industry standard, with Clifford testifying before Congress about fiduciary responsibility extending beyond financial management. The foundation had been Marie's idea. She'd been sitting at Diana's kitchen table doing homework when she'd looked up and asked, "Are there other kids like me, whose parents died in the war?" Diana had frozen, coffee cup halfway to her lips. "Yes, baby. A lot of them. Do they have money like Daddy left me?" "Some do, but most don't." Marie had gone quiet for a long moment. Then she'd said, "I want to help them. I want to use Daddy's money to help them." That was how the Colonel David Gilley Memorial Foundation was born. Marie had donated $10 million from her trust, carefully managed, properly documented, with every safeguard in place. Clifford had matched it with $10 million from his personal wealth. Diana had resigned from Burks Financial Group to serve as executive director, bringing her military experience and fierce protective instincts to the role. The mission was simple: full college scholarships for children of fallen service members. Everything paid: tuition, housing, books, living expenses. No child would have to choose between honoring their parents' sacrifice and building their own future. Now, on November 11th, Veterans Day, they were announcing the first 10 recipients. The ceremony was held at the Miami Veterans Memorial, a waterfront park overlooking Biscayne Bay. 500 people had gathered, veterans in uniform, families holding photographs of the fallen, press with cameras and microphones, politicians who'd initially tried to claim credit but had been firmly redirected by Diana's uncompromising stare. Clifford stood in the back of the crowd, wearing his father's old army jacket that he'd found in storage. Ellen stood beside him, her hand in his. Tom Rodriguez was there in full dress uniform, standing at attention. The Burks Financial Group executive team had come, transformed by what they'd witnessed over the past 3 months. Marie took the podium. She looked different now, healthy, rested, her hair braided with colored beads that Sophia had helped her choose. She wore a navy dress and the shoes that actually fit, but around her wrist was her grandmother's rosary, and in her eyes was that same ancient wisdom that no childhood should contain. "My name is Marie Gilley," she began, her voice steady through the microphone. "I'm 10 years old. My daddy was Colonel David Gilley, and he died protecting his brothers in Afghanistan when I was 6 months old." The crowd was silent, reverent. "I don't remember him, but I know him. I know him because of the choice he made. He didn't leave me money. He left me a lesson." Clifford felt Ellen's grip tighten on his hand. "He taught me that wealth isn't what you have. It's what you give. He gave everything so I could have a future. And now I want to give other kids the same chance." Marie looked down at her note cards, then set them aside. This part she'd memorized. "Today, I'm announcing the first 10 recipients of the Colonel David Gilley Scholarship. 10 kids who lost a parent in service to this country. 10 kids who will go to college, debt-free, because my daddy believed no child should pay for their parents' sacrifice." The applause was thunderous. Veterans saluted. Parents wept. The 10 scholarship recipients, ages ranging from 8 to 17, stood together near the front, holding certificates and photographs of their fallen mothers and fathers. Marie waited for the crowd to quiet. Then she said, "I also want to say something about Mr. Clifford Burks." Clifford felt every eye turn to find him in the back. His first instinct was to leave, to run, but Ellen held him in place. "When I first met Mr. Burks, he made a mistake," Marie continued, her voice clear and unwavering. "He saw a poor kid, and he judged me. But then he did something harder than being perfect. He changed. He listened. He learned. He helped." Clifford couldn't breathe. "My daddy chose Mr. Burks because he saw something good in him. And my daddy was right. Everybody deserves a second chance. That's what my daddy's letter said. That's what America is supposed to be about." Marie's eyes found his across the crowd. "So, Mr. Burks, thank you. Thank you for keeping your promise. Thank you for honoring my daddy. Thank you for showing me that even when we fall, we can get back up." She held out her hand, gesturing for him to join her. Clifford looked at Ellen, who nodded through her tears. He walked forward, and the crowd parted like water. Veterans he'd worked with at the center saluted as he passed. Parents whose children were receiving scholarships touched his shoulder. Tom Rodriguez snapped to attention, his salute perfect and proud. Marie took his hand when he reached the podium, her small fingers wrapping around his. Together, they pulled the cord that unveiled the memorial plaque. "Colonel David James Gilley Medal of Honor, greater love hath no man than this, that he laid down his life for his friends." October 15th, 2014, 2024. A father's love echoes through eternity. The sun was setting over Biscayne Bay, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Tom Rodriguez stepped forward and placed a folded American flag at the base of the memorial. Diana joined him, tears streaming down her face, adding a single white rose. The scholarship recipients came forward one by one, each placing a photograph of their fallen parent beside the flag. 10 faces, 10 service members, 10 families forever changed by sacrifice. Marie stood between Clifford and Diana, looking at her father's memorial, and for the first time since that day in October, she cried. Not the silent tears of survival, but the deep, wrenching sobs of a child finally safe enough to grieve. Clifford knelt beside her, that familiar position he'd learned meant so much, and she wrapped her arms around his neck. "I miss him," she sobbed. I miss him so much and I never even got to know him. I know, sweetheart. I know. But he'd be proud, right? Of the foundation. Of helping other kids. Clifford pulled back to look at her. This remarkable child who'd lost everything and somehow found the grace to give. Your daddy would be so proud of you, Marie. Prouder than you can possibly imagine. The ceremony ended as the sun touched the horizon. Families mingled, sharing stories and photographs. The scholarship recipients took pictures with Marie, this small girl who decided that suffering shouldn't be wasted. Clifford stood apart for a moment, watching it all, and thought about the man he'd been 3 months ago. The man who'd laughed at a barefoot child. The man who'd measured worth in dollars and status in exclusivity. That man was gone, buried in the ruins of a condemned motel room. In his place was someone smaller, quieter, but infinitely richer in ways that actually mattered. Some people come into your life to teach you what you're missing, he said quietly to Ellen, who'd come to stand beside him. Marie taught me how to see. Ellen smiled. Emma would have loved her. Emma would have been just like her. They watched as Marie showed the other scholarship recipients her father's photograph, explaining his service, his sacrifice, his love. 10 children who understood loss, bonded by their parents' courage and this little girl's choice to transform pain into purpose. As the sky darkened and stars began to emerge, Clifford made a silent promise to the memorial, to Colonel Gilley, to the man who'd looked him in the eye and seen someone worth trusting. I'll spend the rest of my life proving you weren't wrong. And as Marie's laughter carried across the memorial park, mixing with the voices of children who'd never be forgotten, Clifford understood that true wealth had nothing to do with what you kept. It had everything to do with what you gave away. To all my amazing viewers, thank you. Every time you watch, like, and share my videos, you keep the echoes of love alive. Your support, your comments, and your time mean more than you know. This channel exists because of you. I appreciate you deeply.